What UConn's non-conference schedule says about Dan Hurley and this current Husky squad. You're on the Hoops Cap.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go.
Welcome into the Hoops Cap pod powered by Big East Energy. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. Thanking you for joining me on the show today. If you like the podcast, subscribe, like all of our shows, review them, find them on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. That's where we will be. The Hoops Cap pod, sponsored by Big East Energy or powered by Big East Energy, sponsored by our friend Joey Bellbonds. If you need his help, 860-916-6747. And of course, our founding sponsor, Asabasa Spice. Make sure you check them out, Asabasa Spice. Use the promo code Big East Energy or Big Flavor 15 for 15% off your first order. What UConn's non-conference schedule says about Dan Hurley is that this isn't about racking up easy wins. Will there be bye games? Absolutely. But this isn't loading up on all of the bye games that we had last year, hidden behind some of the softer MTEs, or going to a ballroom or a beach to give yourself top tier competition. This is Dan Hurley saying we are reloaded. We're good enough to play anyone, anywhere, and we're built for this. Let's line them up. So remember last year, he said in a press conference, he actually said this a couple weeks before they had their disastrous Maui trip, that he wasn't going to do MTEs anymore because of the changing landscape in college basketball. They were going to try to do more home and homes, try to do more neutral site games that make sense for them. And that's exactly what he did. Take Dan Hurley as a man of his word, because he typically comes through with what he offers. And he built this schedule that, to me, there's a saying, at least in the college basketball world that I've been a part of, that, you want to be a parking lot guy, whether you're a player or a coach. And what that means is we don't care if there's 20,000 people in the arena or 20 people. We'll play you in a parking lot. We don't care what we play. That's the mentality. We'll lace them up wherever. Boston, TD Bank Garden, let's go. MSG, a.k.a. Store South, let's go. Phog Allen, see you in December. Back in Hartford, yep. Even though the Civic Center got a new name, People's Bank Arena, will be there. And it's not just a statement. It's a declaration that not only is this team reloaded and ready to go, that banner number 7 is a lot closer than what people might realize, because they didn't need to go crazy in the portal. You don't need to do that when you retain players that give you production. 65% of the points and the rebounds and the production that UConn had last year is now back on this 25-26 roster. We already know this, but let's break it down. Last year, that chaos in Maui, the injuries, the Liam McNeely started a hampering injury at that point towards the end of that MTE. Alex Caravan got a really bad concussion. I think it definitely took a toll, and it also kind of really sideswiped or redirected the expectations for this Husky team in what was a roller coaster of a season, right? So even prior to the result, they said no more MTEs. But instead of really being a softer, bye-heavy, a few regional games here and there, this team and this staff, got to give kudos to Tom Moore, who is putting, I would say, the majority, if not all of this together. Obviously Dan puts his rubber stamp on it, but Tom Moore as the new GM, absolutely killer schedule. Trusting our guys, not ducking anyone. I'm sure there were other opportunities to play some of the other blue bloods like Duke, who, again, doesn't play us, couldn't figure it out. For all the shit we talk about Kansas being soft and Bill Self running from this, I'll be honest with you, man. Bill Self doesn't run from really any home and homes. It's just a matter of kind of, can you figure it out? But also, he typically would be like, you come to us first, because obviously there's always a back out option, which I don't think Kansas will do that. But we got defending champs in Florida, the previous defending champs prior to our back-to-back ramp, Rob in Kansas, who we just talked about, 2026 projected number 1 pick in AJ DeBonsa with BYU, and also a reloaded roster there. That BYU team is going to be sick. There's no shortcuts. So you get to control the build-up, maybe, space out the matchups in your head, prepare like professionals, which is what we are. This is a schedule built for what's essentially looking like a March run. And it really is kind of what I think it's going to be more so that they're doing this because even though the Big East is better this year, in my opinion, because I think Xavier's going to surprise some folks. I think Georgetown's going to surprise some folks. But you're going to have 4 to 5, maybe 6 quad 1 opportunities of your 11 teams in the Big East. The rest are going to be quad 2. Let's all say a prayer, and hopefully Seton Hall and others, I think DePaul will be a quad 2, that they're not in that quad 3, quad 4 range, that all of the games in the Big East will be counting towards your net ranking, your Ken Pom, like all of the numbers they take into consideration for seeding. Because UConn, although in a down year, being an 8 seed last year, they were seeded correctly, but also because they really didn't get a ton of opportunities outside of the quad 1 games that they scheduled. And also with these teams that they're playing, I think Texas is the only one that I would say is the only one in danger of dropping from a quad 1 to a quad 2. I don't think Kansas is going to drop out of a quad 1. I think they've reloaded. BYU, as we talked about, Illinois is going to be better than they were last year. Ton of transfer love that they got. We're going to have an Illinois guy on to talk about that in the future. He was sick this week to talk about that, but Florida is going to be phenomenal. They're going to be a top 5 team. I just don't see them losing out the way they did this year with the Kansas and the Texas and the Baylor guys dropping down, and Gonzaga, same thing. Like Gonzaga had a precipitous drop from what was supposed to be a really top flight team to a team that was similar to UConn. So the opportunity to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 non-conference games that are all going to be a situation where they're quad 1 games. Arizona might drop, but that probably won't, because they're a Big 12 team and they're going to get a ton of quad 1 opportunities themselves. So that is the biggest part of this, is like your who you play at specific times matters. But if you play a Texas and they're a top 10 team, and then by the time February, March comes around and we're at Selection Sunday, and all of a sudden that Texas team is now a quad 1, but it's on the fringe of quad 2, and it's not as good of a win anymore, it messes with the system. I think that needs to change, but that's the deal is the deal. Anyway, I'm excited about this. There is no shortage of storylines, and we're going to talk about that in the games that matter and why after the break, and a message from our other sponsor, who's an affiliate of ours in the Feel Good Lab. We're going to talk about that coming up after the break.
Big East Energy, Ryan Gresh here with the Feel Good Lab, and the same tools that we use to help elite athletes like Hassan Diarra, Nika Mule, and our very own Cam Spencer are the same things that we use to help people like you and I. People that want to optimize their overall health, feel a little bit younger, or are suffering from a chronic condition. And it's all about reducing inflammation, improving the nutrients in our body, and fixing our gut. And the way that we do that is not through a one-size-fits-all model. Everything is personalized. We offer products that are plant-based, natural, and help you identify the root cause. And oftentimes, we're looking at what's going into our body. So we have a food inflammation test, a gut microbiome test, so that we can treat you like an individual human that you are. And so the thing that we're the most excited about is actually connecting with you. Whether you're a UConn fan or not, please reach out, call us. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can help. Best in health.
All right, we're back on the Hoops Cap Pod, powered by Big East Energy. Go to bigeastenergy.com to check out our new merch. The Dream Season collection is available. If you're an old school fan like me, I think you'll appreciate some of these tees and hoodies that we have, and probably soon to be some hats that are created as well. But let's go through these games. BYU in Boston, TD Garden, Dybonsa, Alex Garvin in the spotlight. New look BYU. Robert Wright is on that team. It's going to be a tough game because, look, I said this on another podcast. AJ is a monster. I don't know what his translation to college will be, if it's going to be Cooper Flag-esque, because he's that type of special. I don't necessarily know if he moves the needle on defense as much as Cooper does, but as far as what he brings, the effective nature of which he's able to facilitate, very similar game to, I'm going to say a big name, and people are going to kill me for it, but a Kevin Durant, but a little thicker. He's not as wiry, if you will. But that dude is a prototype pro, and I don't know who UConn guards him with. Maybe it's a mixture of Terrace, maybe it's Dwayne Coromo, the new transfer who's 6'8" and can kind of guard multiple positions. Maybe they go big, maybe they go small, kind of mix it up against them. But it's really going to be about the collective effort of the teams that will determine who wins this game. But I'm sure Dan and the staff will scheme up and be ready for AJ and his big city, big lights, big moment for him coming back to an area that he grew up in before heading and taking his talents out west for his high school career. So, that one's a big one. And I'm looking forward to that in TD Garden in Boston, a Stores North, as some call it, right? Then you have Arizona. This one has just names to it. Arizona is a big name. You're playing a Big 12 team. You're playing likely a big time conference game in Hartford at People's Bank Arena. Bryce James, yes, LeBron James's other son, who's a much bigger physically gifted player than Bronny, is coming to Connecticut. I think he's also 6'7", 6'8", a little less coordinated, but the physical tools are there. He's obviously LeBron James's kid, so he's got some game, right? And I think you probably see LeBron in the building. Is LeBron going to be there? We'll see. He's been a huge figure in both of his kids' lives, for better or for worse. And it begs the question, will LeBron James, maybe Bronny too, will they be both in the building in Hartford? I believe it's in November. This is an old school home and home, and we're returning that favor and going back to Tucson in 2026. So looking forward to that. Arizona was a team that I used to love watching when I was a kid. Miles Simon, Mike Bibby, Richard Jefferson, Gilbert Arenas. Why am I blanking on the name of the coach? God, it's Lou, right? I'm my age is showing. Lute Olson. Had to pause to look that because I was thinking Lou and Lute. I'm sure Lute Olson, God rest his soul. Pretty sure he passed away. Was throwing some loot to those boys back in the day, because the Arizona team was always good and upset Kentucky in the finals. I was rooting against all of the Blue Bloods back then, right? Before UConn entered that conversation. But yeah, Lute Olson was always a fun guy to root for, and always had good teams, upstart teams. Love those colors. Really cool to see them coming to Hartford. And then we moved to Illinois, going back to the scene of the crime, where I've use this analogy before, where if that was a fight, you would have had a fight ref would have jumped in there and call it off 30-0 in the Elite Eight, where UConn took Illinois' soul and basically just made them just take all their lunch money, and all the different analogies you could use from that game. Was a brutal assault. And what's funny is Sonny, who's going to come on the show and talk about Illinois UConn matchup at some point, we're going to talk about it either off season or in season. I went on his show before that game. God, I think this was a couple years back. And I remember saying to him, he said, in what world do you think UConn is beatable? And I said, I don't. And he was just like, well, that's kind of arrogant. And I was just like, well, this team is basically showed me from the start that you can trust them, and there's not a team that's out there, and this was Purdue included, that really can handle them and handle all of the options that they have. And if a team isn't careful, they can get their doors blown off. And that's exactly what happened. And there's actual video and tape of this, so we can show that if you need to. But I don't think I've ever forgotten about the 30-0 run, and I likely watch that on average once or twice a week, just because it's so much fun. So yeah, that'll be a fun one to revisit. I'm sure they'll show those clips to the dismay of Illini fans, and that's a shame. But anyway, we move on. Florida and New York as part of the Jimmy V Classic. Hey Gators, you won last year. Tip of the cap. Congrats, but that was a blip on the radar screen. Do not get comfortable. We're back, and we'll be waiting for you, along with 20,000 of our fan base, ready to get that UConn chant rolling. And yeah, I just don't. I look at that Florida team this year coming back, and they're reloaded as well. It's just such another great test against a team that is likely going to be one of the favorites to get back to the Final Four and potentially repeat. And I really don't want that to happen because I want UConn to kind of keep that moniker a little longer than the old Florida team that went back to back that they broke. So then the return, Texas at Gamble, who last year we went to Austin, took care of business there. This year the Longhorns are making the return trip, returning the favor. This one of those, hey man, like we beat you on your home floor. Now come to stores and take your medicine there too. Gamble's going to be rocking and rolling. Love that the Longhorns are making that trip. I don't expect Texas to be that much better than they were last year. They're losing a ton. Trey Johnson's going to the pros. I know Sean Miller is going to recruit the hell out of that to kind of take a bunch of his Xavier guys. So there'll probably be some pretty familiar foes coming to Gamble in this winter. So mark your calendars on that one. And the last one that was just announced was Kansas. In Kansas as part of a home and home. I know people are already kind of being like, hey man, I'm gonna go to Kansas for this game. And that is really something that I need to do. I'm not making that proclamation. I think it's December 2nd. I think UConn is actually going to go into Kansas sight unseen. I'm not even looking at the rosters, but man, this would be a really great win because they haven't ever won in Kansas. I don't think they might be like 0-4 against Kansas all time. It hasn't been a house of horror, so to speak, but it's definitely not something that you want to have on your resume. It's like, we've never beaten those guys. Yeah, we've never beaten them. I didn't think so. Like, I think, and it's 4 games, not a ton of history, but the first game that we've ever played was when UConn was undefeated, number 2 in the country in the Power Bar shootout, and we got our doors blown off by a Kansas team that had Rafe LaFrance, Greg Ostertag, Jock Vaughn, Scott Pollard, Jared Haas that just destroyed us. They were up 47-27 at halftime. This was a team that was led by Ray Allen, Ray, Jesus Shuttlesworth. You had Donnie Marshall, Travis Knight, Daron Sheffer, Kevin Ollie, that Kirk King freshman year, Rudy Johnson, that team, Brian Fair, Eric Hayward. That group lost to this Kansas team. At that point was undefeated, number 2 in the country, 88-59 in Kansas City at the Kemper Arena. And then they lost. We lost in Hartford in 96-97. Similar squad, obviously no Ray Allen, but a really good team, but lost by 8 points there. And then you fast forward to our, the modern times, if you will, right? Little pre-NIL stuff, but you lose a neutral site game in a second round game in Des Moines, Iowa, to then 1 seed Kansas 73-61. I think Daniel Hamilton was the leader of that team. If I'm just looking at it dry here. And then a couple years ago, one of the only games you lose was neutral site, or not neutral site, in Lawrence. First time visiting, lose 69-65, or making that return this year. That game was almost out of hand early, with no Steph Castle, with no Cam Spencer tweaking his ankle initially, and Tristan Newton just playing out of his gourd and just kind of keeping us in that game. Hopefully we have a Tristan Newton-like effort from Silas Damari Jr. And other newcomers, as well as our boy Alex Caravan and Terrace Reed and folks taking care of business, solo ball, and the boys taking care of business in Phog Allen there. But that's the non-conference slate, and honestly, it's the best non-conference slate we've ever had. So if we're gonna parse it down, maybe it's the best non-conference ever, but definitely the best non-conference of the Dan Hurley era. And So kudos, Tom Moore and staff. Appreciate you guys doing that. When we return, we're going to talk about what it all means, why this is such an aggressive turn on the schedule, and close out the show. We'll be back after this. Welcome into the Hoop Scout Pod. Again, for the final segment, talking about the best non-conference schedule of the Dan Hurley era. It's not random either. It's aggressive. It's intentional. It's targeted. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure there were others. I would love to kind of have that conversation as we get closer to the season on teams that they called that maybe just didn't have the ability or couldn't do it. But Dan Hurley knows what he has. He has a team that is 100% going to compete for a national championship. He's got a roster he believes in that is a retain plus model. He retained who he wanted. He let go who wanted to leave. Fought for those that maybe were on the fence, i.e. like someone like Terrace. And he's got the credibility now to say, back-to-back national champion, took this undermanned UConn team to the brink of ousting the best team in college basketball last year and losing the second round. We want all the smoke. And it's really not about building essentially a brand, because UConn has been running college basketball for 30 years, but it's really just setting the standard for what will be the next few years, that they're not slowing down, that this is not a team that is looking to kind of, pad their resume with cupcake games, as Dick Vitale used to say. Cupcake City, baby. There's my Dick Vitale impression. But he's playing him and Coach Hurley and the staff, because of the moves they made strategically in the portal, by the freshmen they brought in, by the kind of back end transfers that they brought in to add more stability and some age, right? Some experience to the mix, with a kid like Alec, a kid like Dwayne, who played a ton of games in their life and will 100% contribute to this team. This team's ready to compete for a national title. It's going to take time. It's going to take some effort from especially the guards like Silas, like Malachi, to learn this system. Kid like Braylon coming in. All of these guys have the traits and the attributes that UConn basketball has been built on under the Dan Hurley era. They're not asking guys to do things that they aren't comfortable with and accept that challenge. And this is not a knock on Aiden Mahaney, but those were the guys they brought in last year. Can you accept the challenge of being the guy every night? And the answer to that question last year was no. A kid like Ahmad Noel, can you answer the toll of a physical, season over and over again? Can you answer that bell? And the answer to that question was no. Injuries, frustration around maybe him not playing well or not playing at all. So they're reverting back to bigger guards. The smaller guards are more backup, and on top of it, playmakers, guys who can get their own bucket off schedule. That's the arena that they've turned to by prioritizing a guy like Silas, a kid like Malachi, position of versatility with a kid like Dwayne, experience with a kid like Alec. Think of all the names that I mentioned, and then transpose that to Silas being that Tristan Newton clone, Malachi being that Haas incarnate, right? A clone of Haas in terms of like his size, his mentality, and then a kid like Dwayne is very similar to kind of like a better, not better, a more experienced version of a Jalen Stewart that's kind of like an older, and Jalen being that next guy that's trying to take that leap. Solo did last year. Is he the next guy that's going to take that leap? And then on top of it, the last one that I will mention is a guy like Alec. Kind of reminds me of a Naheem Aline type, where that guy came in and gave 1,000% effort, was a lightning rod for scoring points, and also could play point in a pinch. Didn't do a ton of it because you had guys like Joey California on that team. Also could be like a Joey California guy. He shot 45% from three. So that standard is going to continue, and that's why they're challenging themselves, because they want to have all of the ability to kind of to draw from these games and help them in Big East schedule, help them as they build towards March. So forget the MTEs. It's really not about convenience. It's about setting yourself up for what your conference is going to be like. And this non-conference slate is saying that we're either here to dominate or it'll expose if we're not ready. I definitely feel like it's the latter. And, every month leading up to it, every day, every week, I can't convey how excited I am for this men's basketball season to start. They've loaded the schedule. I think they're chasing now, which is another great place to be, because it's so much more fun to be the hunter than the hunted. So this is what number 7, the mindset of this might actually look like. So I'm ready to ride, Husky faithful. Roll skis. And this has been another episode of the Hoops Cat Pod. As always, go Huskies.
Let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions.